Well, Player One, welcome to the Gaming History Club. My name is Gabby.
Hello, and I'm JP. Cereal box games came with wholesome brownie video games and some that came kind of flaky as well, but they certainly made for beloved childhood memories for many of us. So grab your spoon and let's dig into some yummy sugar frosted game bites. So a little bit of forewarning, I guess, Gabby. We never actually got any video games in our cereal boxes as kids, did we?
No, not that I can think of anyway, to be
Yeah,
honest. Yeah,
so
yeah.
we are definitely no authority here on cereal box video games. So a lot of research has been done this time around. But I
Yeah,
mean, what a nice little corner of video game history to dig into. A very
yeah. And apparently it's really fun. So,
yeah, very
yeah.
wholesome, very innocent. Full of sugar as well, which we love sugar, don't we?
Well, I try not to, but,
Yeah, but sugar loves us definitely.
definitely,
Mm.
yes. But I think even though you've never played cereal box games, you played some games that actually came out of them, right?
Yes, that is true. We will talk about that one game later. So, like, yeah, I don't even know how that happened. So, I didn't get it in a cereal box, but yet games that came with cereal boxes still made it into my game collection
Collection,
as a
yeah.
kid somehow. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So, as usual, right? Let's start by defining. And this time we're going to start with defining what is breakfast cereal.
Really? Are we really going to define breakfast cereal?
Nah, yeah, that's fine. We don't need to talk about that. But yeah, anyway, you might be wondering though, when did we actually start eating cereal for breakfast? I mean, you might not care, but I thought it's quite interesting, right? So, we will talk about it.
Yeah, tough if you don't find it interesting, player one, because I'll give you all the details anyway. Because turns out, well, we've actually been eating grains like wheat and barley for over 20,000 years, but obviously not in the form of cocoa puffs. These ancient meals were usually cooked into hot porridge, so no cartoon mascots, no free toys, and definitely no video games, just grains and fire.
Oh, that doesn't sound too delicious. But
No,
anyway.
the idea of the ready to eat boxed breakfast cereals. So, the kind that you can just, pour some milk in and, you're good to go.
Mhm.
So that didn't come around until like the mid to late 19th century. So mid to late 1800s. So that's when things really started cooking. Well, not cooking, milking, I guess.
Milking. Okay, sure. Just pour milk. Okay. But yeah, came the real game changer though, Kellogg's in the early 1900s. They introduced cornflakes, which we still enjoy nowadays as well. And more importantly, they leaned hard into advertising and marketing. So in 1909, they offered what's likely the first kid targeted prize in cereal history, the Funny Jungleland Moving Pictures book. So if you bought two boxes of cornflakes, you'd get this colorful little booklet full of goofy animal characters and short stories as well, which is totally free. Come with the
Awesome.
cereal, yeah.
Nice.
So, yeah, sure, it wasn't the very first freebie ever handed out with groceries, but it was probably the first one aimed specifically at children. That little booklet sparked something big, though.
Yeah, it definitely did spark something big because suddenly cereal wasn't just like a food anymore. It wasn't just, fun for the whole family. There were like little puzzles now. There was toys coming in the breakfast cereal boxes. It was like a little playground for everybody in the family. But it wasn't like, over the top and very loud kind of advertising just yet. It was still very, neutral, plain, simple, family oriented, not, straight for the kids craziness.
But at this point, we're still half a century away from video games, so let's skip ahead to just after World War II. You know what? For a gaming podcast, we surely talk about the war like a lot.
We do talk about the war a lot, don't we? Yeah. Hmm.
But yeah, anyway, before the war, cereals mostly sold themselves as quote unquote healthy, like high fiber, good for digestion, something for the whole family. And honestly, they still do that even today, even though some of them have way more sugar than an actual. bag of sugar. That's crazy.
Yeah, and back then the prizes as well. I mean, that was like, few and far in between. And the mascots, they weren't exactly like the party animals that they are nowadays, right? They were more, like calm, collected, like the Quaker man, basically.
Ah, the Quaker Oats man.
Yes,
Yeah.
the Quaker Oats man. Yeah, exactly. But after the war, like that's when things got out of hand very quickly. So you have to think of it this way, right? You have the baby boom that brought millions of kids. Yeah, families were moving into the suburbs. Women were being pushed into the role of being the housewife at home. TVs were suddenly in everyone's home, and convenience became king.
Yeah, and of course, seeing all the cereal companies saw their chance, they didn't hold back either. They started going straight for kids. So, more sugar, give them more sugar rush, basically. More color, more chaos. So, during this time, mascots got louder and prices got cooler too. So, breakfast cereal became a battle for kids' attention.
Yeah, and these mascots weren't just designed to, decorate the cereal boxes. No, they were actual celebrities for these kids. Basically, think about Tony the Tiger from Frosted Flakes. It was hardly just a marketing tool at this point. They were like actual real people for these kids. They were celebrities on the TV, almost like, from real cartoons.
Yeah, and because TVs were basically starting to get like really common in people's houses, cereal companies leaned hard into television. So they sponsored kids shows, integrated mascots into cartoons. Basically, if you were watching Saturday morning TV, cereal was part of the package. You will see it. And the crazy part with this is that they didn't even bother with the parents. What I'm trying to say is they skipped straight past the grown-ups and spoke directly to kids. So they used that bright colors, flashy boxes, games and puzzles on the back, and sugar. So much sugar. So basically, they just tried to entice the kids directly.
Oh, yeah, it was one of the first and perhaps the most powerful examples where the marketing is fully blown towards the kids now. And it's almost not like just advertising anymore. It's basically like conditioning them. It's like brainwashing them, like, you must buy our sugar. Yeah, cereal became something kids begged for at the store. And once they tasted that sugary blast, it got them hooked.
So, yeah, with everything we've talked about so far, is it really any surprise that video games ended up in cereal boxes? It almost feels like destined at this point. Of course, you couldn't exactly stuff an arcade cabinet into a cereal box, though probably if someone could have figured that out, probably they would have, I'm thinking.
Yeah, they would have definitely tried. This was one of the really interesting things when we were doing the research here, because video games didn't just show up inside the cereal boxes, they completely absorbed the cereal industry's playbook on how to market towards kids, actually. So the cereal industry had already cracked the code, if you will. Kids might not be the ones who buy the product, but they are definitely the ones who decide what goes into the shopping cart, right? So games totally borrowed the tricks from the cereal box companies here. The wild visuals, the catchy slogans, the mascots with major personalities. You can think of like Tony the Tiger as being like Sonic the Hedgehog, or Lucky the Leprechaun being Spyro the Dragon, Captain Crunch. Well, that's Crash Bandicoot in a naval uniform, and Sugar Bear, he's basically just Donkey Kong. Honestly, like, these worlds are like parallel to each other.
But of course, right, when video games first showed up in the early 70s, there weren't really any mascots or colors to talk about. I mean, a paddle from Pong? That's not even resembling a paddle in a way, and not exactly a cuddly action icon.
No, our cuddly action icons, they come from the 80s with, Pac-Man obviously, and Donkey Kong. That's when we get our mascots as well in the video game industry.
Yeah, the golden age of arcade, right?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And yes, cereal companies wasted no time jumping to the trend as well. In 1982,
Captain Crunch.
Captain Crunch. Yes, so Captain Crunch gave away 5,000 Atari 2600 consoles. I mean, I wish we still live in that era, to be honest.
Oh, that is a lot of consoles that they're giving away. Man.
Yeah, and whole cereal boxes were themed after video games. Donkey Kong Jr., Pac Man all had their own cereals.
Yeah, this is true. You know what? In 1988, they even had the Nintendo Cereal System, right? And this was like a collaboration with Ralston. And so they had like one box, and you get like two bags, and like one bag would be like Mario characters, and like the other bag would be like Zelda characters.
What? That's
Oh,
so awesome.
Nintendo Cereal System.
That sounds good.
That is too good to be true, but it is real.
Yeah, but also have you noticed we've talked a lot so far, and we haven't even talked about any games that come in cereal boxes.
No, no, we're just we're just getting the munchies now at this point.
I know, yeah. But finally, right, let's talk about the video games that actually came with the cereal boxes. The trend really kicked off in the mid 90s when PCs became common in homes and CDs were cheap and you can get it everywhere.
Yeah, so while cereal boxes might still be giving out like color changing spoons and plastic gliders, we were already playing like Resident Evil, Tomb Raider, Super Mario 64, Quake. We were already gaming real hard in the mid 90s here.
And one cereal company decided to bring that kind of excitement to breakfast. So Ralston Foods, Ralston, the one we mentioned before, who owned Chex cereal, teamed up with ad agency Waters Molitor and developer Digital Cafe to make an original game. And they plan to put it in 5.7 million boxes of Chex. That is a lot of cereal.
That has a lot of cereal, and that's a lot of video game too.
Yeah, so Digital Cafe's lead artist Charles Jacoby and programmer Scott Holman had this hilarious idea. So neither of them had worked in game development before, but both had made mods for Doom.
Mm-mm.
So they pitched this, you know what? We can make a Doom clone, but for cereal.
And on a side note, modding Doom, that was like a very legitimate path into getting into the video game industry as well. So Jacoby and Holman, they were not alone by far. And at first the idea actually got shut down. But you know what? id Software did come back to them with a very lucrative deal because they were just giving out this game for free, right? So id Software thought to themselves, well, you know what? Let's just, give them like a pretty cheap deal to allow them to use the Doom engine for their own video game. It was just going to be Doom, but with different graphics, basically, different sprites.
Yeah, and also they were probably already busy with Quake anyway.
Exactly. Doom was like yesterday's news already. People were already playing Quake.
Yeah, and that's why the project basically got a green light.
So, but hold on, can you actually imagine like kids getting Doom with their breakfast, by the way?
Will the breakfast be red? But yes, that's how the very first video game in a cereal box was born, Chex Quest. With a budget of $500,000, Digital Cafe got to work turning Doom into something totally kid-friendly. So, yep, not red cereal here, nothing resembling blood, basically. Out went the blood and gore, in came the goo-covered aliens and cereal references.
Yeah, so the Doom guy became the Chex warrior. So he wore the armor made from like an actual like cereal Chex piece, and he defended the planet Bazoik from the evil Flamoids, who were these gross little aliens who were attacking everyone by shooting snot.
Ew.
Yes, snot. Yeah, you're right. Snot. Ew. Yucks.
But you know what? I really love the naming convention there. Like Planet Bazoik.
Evil
I
Flamoids.
know, yeah. That's so cool. But yeah, Chex Quest had a great sense of humor, but if we're honest, it was still Doom under the hood. Like you can tell it's Doom. So when it launched in 1996, people were pretty divided.
Yeah, so people were divided for sure. On the one hand, you obviously had the kids who, I mean, just imagine, a 10-year-old kid playing Doom, but instead of the blood, it's something that's actually like very PG. of course they're going to love it, right?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, but then the older, more informed gamers, they of course knew this was like just a Doom clone with different, sprites. So they didn't think it was like, all that cool. But I mean, they got Doom for free, in a
What
way.
do they know
I
anyway?
know,
Oh
come
my
on,
god, let the kids have their fun, right?
true that.
Yeah, but you know what? This was a game that could have easily been sold for $30, but instead, it came free in your cereal box. So that alone made it groundbreaking and such a big win.
Yeah, and it didn't go unnoticed either. Chex Quest won big in the world of advertising and promotions.
Yep, so Chex Quest wasn't just the first, it was the most popular and probably the best original video game ever packed inside a cereal box. And yeah, it also came with a 50-hour trial of America Online because it was the 90s and that was practically the law. So, of course, kids loved it, parents actually approved of it, and it totally worked. The game got a full sequel the very next year in 1997, then another one in 2008.
Yes, and in 2020 they dropped Chex Quest HD, which was a full remake of the original in glorious high definition, and it's still free and it's still kind of amazing.
But not in cereal boxes anymore, though.
Yeah, no, it's on Steam now for free. Yes.
But yeah, that's not even counting all the fun sequels, mods, and the fan art. So Chex Quest wasn't just a one off, it sparked a whole cult following.
Yeah, a generation of kids definitely fell in love with secretly playing Doom without even knowing that they were playing Doom.
Yeah, I know, because it's not full of blood. That's crazy, right?
Yeah, and if this was your first person shooter ever that you're playing, I mean, what a wonderful first time with an FPS as a kid. Honestly, like I'm a little bit jealous if this was your first FPS ever playing.
So yeah, no surprise there. After Chex Quest blew up, other cereal companies weren't just gonna sit back and do nothing. They want to jump into the trend as well.
Yeah, so we're talking about original concept games, they had edutainment software, they had demo games, they even had full on commercial titles that you would normally buy in a store, all packed up in your cereal box.
So according to Moby Games, there were at least 54 of these cereal box video games. But it doesn't even count the international ones, so the number's probably way bigger.
Yeah, so some companies try to emulate the Chex Quest formula. So Captain Crunch's Crunchling Adventure, for
A
example.
wholesome name.
Yes, this came out in 1999, and yeah, it was kind of weird though, to be honest. You played a little Crunchling in like 3 mini games to compete against thieves, stealing the Crunchium used to make cereals. Yeah,
The names, great. Okay. But yeah, Kellogg's got creative as well. They released Frosty's Grand Prix, basically Formula One racing, but with cereal mascots zooming through breakfast themed racetracks.
yes, or Corn Pop's Wild West Shootout, which was a rail shooter with cereals.
Yeah, none other than cereal, basically. So, yeah, everything was silly, everything was fun, and it was all basically free coming with your breakfast. But let's be honest, right? None of the other original cereal box games really reach the same legendary status as Chex Quest. I think Chex Quest was just the exception in a way.
Yeah, but one real hidden gem amongst these cereal box video games were the digitized board games, though. These were really cool. So, you might remember Clue or Cluedo, depending on where you're from, if you're from the States or not. So, this would have come in the States in your box of Cinnamon Toast Crunch. And yeah, this was almost 20 years ago, and it's basically like a couch detective style board game, but digitized for your PC. So you're figuring out who did it and where and with what weapon. And that was really, really cool.
And it wasn't just Clue either. There were PC versions for Scrabble, for example, or Sorry, even the Game of Life.
Yeah, I mean, considering these were completely free and you didn't even have to, set up a board and you didn't have to deal with all the pieces that you end up losing all the time, it was a pretty sweet deal to get with your cereal box, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But of course, we also have to talk about the edutainment games because, well, yeah, they also made up quite a big chunk of the cereal box game library.
Yeah, but they weren't always super boring or lame, like you might think. By the way, some were actually pretty charming little adventures, like point and click ones, for example.
Yeah, so take Pajama Sam, for example. So that one wasn't made just for cereal boxes, but it was definitely given out in them. And later they would also make sequels, but then the sequels were only given demos that you could get in your cereal box.
Oh, so basically, they will give some taste to the kids, and then the kids will ask for the full version of the game, basically.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
Yeah.
pretty smart, pretty smart. But yeah, not only Pajama Sam, actually, Spy Fox followed a similar path. So that one popped up in cereal like Cocoa Puffs. So both games had this really quirky humor and that old school point and click charm, I can say. They've even been re released on Steam, and Spy Fox made it all the way to the Wii as well.
So yeah, even the educational cereal games weren't just spelling bees and math drills. Some of them were actually legit fun.
But let's be real, right? The most exciting type of cereal box games, especially for people who are like serious gamers, back in the late 90s and early 2000s, it wouldn't be those games we've already talked about. It's going to be when you open that cereal box and you find a full priced game for free. And that happened.
Yeah, that's right. It did happen. And big games like Age of Empires, Roller Coaster Tycoon, even a CD packed with 80 Atari games was once inside of one of these cereal boxes. That's absolutely crazy. That's like now if you have Mario Kart World Tour or Minecraft or 80 Nintendo classic games coming in your cereal box. Like, that's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of wild to think that that actually happened. It wasn't just full games though, demos were also pretty big. So, back when demo CDs were a big thing, slapping one in a cereal box was an instant boost for sales as well.
Yeah, so a great example is actually the very first Tony Hawk's Pro Skater game that was released as a demo inside of cereal boxes as well sometimes. Obviously, not all demos are as cool as like Tony Hawk's, obviously, but if it looked cool enough on the cereal box, well, that was more than enough to convince kids and their parents to grab it off the shelf.
But of course, you don't really see this video games inside cereal boxes anymore nowadays. So let's get into what did end the whole cereal box video game craze. If we look at the timeline, things really started dying down around the mid 2000s. The last one listed on Moby Games was Art Attack from 2006, which was, yeah, it was pretty cool, especially if you consider the Art Attack guy may or may not be Banksy, depending what you believe. But anyway, yeah, around that time, the internet was picking up big time, and download speeds were finally fast enough that you didn't need to shove a CD in a box of cereal anymore.
Yeah, now it's all about online codes and mobile apps and instant downloads. The magic of the disc in your cornflakes kind of just faded out with the times. But still, it was such a fun, weird little slice of gaming history, and it definitely deserved its own episode, I think. Not all the games were amazing, but some of them really were, and especially for the kids who've played them, those memories are seriously nostalgic. And with that, Player One, I hope you enjoyed this deceivingly interesting gaming history golden nugget. Do you have any favorite breakfast cereal games? Let us know by dropping us a message on our website, gaminghistory.club.
And as usual, new episodes of Gaming History Club are released every other Wednesday, so make sure you subscribe and follow us on our social media. We're on Instagram and Facebook as Gaming History Club.
Come back in a couple of weeks, Player One, where we talk about spending hours, perhaps days, customizing the look of our character before actually starting the game. See ya.